Do you know who I am?
No, I don't. No, no. Oh.
GloRilla's drug arrest has been public knowledge for a while, but her recent courtroom behavior might have just made things worse. Word on the street is she showed up in court acting real nonchalant. Now the judge is heated and things are getting real ugly. Could this lil stunt land her behind bars? Stick around, we're breaking it all down. When they ran up in Glo's spot. On Saturday night, July 19th, 2025, while most folks are either posted up on the block or chilling at the crib, GloRilla was out in Indianapolis doing her thing, performing at the WNBA All-Star Game, spitting bars during halftime with Let Her Cook, Typa, and TGI. Shorty was living the dream, getting her shine on at one of the biggest stages in women's sports, completely oblivious to the fact that some were about to turn her whole world upside down back home in Georgia. Now check it, at about 1:30 in the morning, while Glo was probably somewhere celebrating her performance, or maybe sliding back to her hotel room, 3 masked up suspects decided to run up in her crib in St. Marlowe subdivision, Forsyth County, Georgia. This wasn't no random smash and grab by some crackheads looking for whatever they could flip for a quick 20. Hell nah. This was some calculated, premeditated street stuff. And according to her legal team, these dirty most likely knew she wasn't there. But yo, here's where this story gets real spicy. Glo wasn't rolling solo in that house. Family members were posted up at her spot, and they got traumatized by these grimy burglars who violated their space. Can you imagine being in somebody else's crib thinking you safe and secure, and suddenly you hear glass breaking and footsteps where they ain't supposed to be? These wasn't just some amateur hour stick-up kids looking to grab a TV and bounce neither. The suspects specifically targeted and snatched up high-value jewelry before they dipped, which tells you these clowns knew exactly what they was looking for and where to find it. That level of inside knowledge got me wondering who was feeding these streets information about Glo's lifestyle, her jewelry collection, and most importantly, when she wouldn't be home. Now here's where this gets real gangster, and I mean that in the most serious way possible. One of the people in the house was strapped and ready to protect the spot, firing shots at these intruders and making them scatter like roaches when the lights come on. Thank God nobody got hit. Not the people defending the house or even the suspects who deserved to catch some hot ones. This detail is crucial because it shows whoever was holding it down wasn't trying to body nobody. They was just trying to protect the family and the property, exactly like they supposed to do. So the family did what any law-abiding citizen's supposed to do when something foul goes down. They called the boys in blue. They was the victims of some violent street level. They defended themselves legally, and they wanted these criminals caught and thrown under the jail. What happened next will make your blood boil and have you questioning everything you thought you knew about how these police really prioritize things in America. The deputies rolled up to investigate the burglary and started doing their investigation because shots got fired. That makes perfect sense. Bullets was flying, crimes was committed, evidence needed to be collected. Major crimes detectives and the crime scene unit got involved, showing that the authorities was taking this seriously as the violent felony it was. But then something suspicious happened that would flip this whole case upside down. While they was investigating, these deputies claimed they smelled some loud, a strong odor consistent with illegal narcotics. Now hold up, let me paint this picture for y'all real clear. These officers came to investigate some real violent street stuff. Shots fired, property stolen, dangerous criminals on the loose, and instead of keeping their eyes on the prize and catching these armed burglars, they decided to switch up and focus on some weed smell.
They got a search warrant and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
So now they hitting up the Lanier Regional Drug Task Force and getting search warrants for the property. Think about all the resources getting wasted here. A whole drug task force, extra officers, paperwork for search warrants, all while the real criminals who terrorized this family was getting further away every minute that passed. When they executed that search warrant, these folks found what they called a significant amount of marijuana in the master bedroom closet, plus some unspecified Schedule Uncontrolled substance. WSB-TV reported they found about 2 pounds of loud and some THC wax during their little treasure hunt. Now here's the part that'll have you ready to flip tables. GloRilla was hundreds of miles away, doing her thing at a nationally televised sporting event with thousands of witnesses, and cameras documenting every move she made. Shorty had the most airtight alibi anybody could ever dream of, yet somehow, someway, she was about to become the only person catching charges in this whole messed up situation. The weed and other substances was supposedly in plain view, which raises some real uncomfortable questions. If this stuff was really sitting out in the open like that, why didn't the people staying at the house, people who supposedly cared about Glo's well-being and reputation, handle things before calling the police? Or better yet, why didn't they clean house immediately after the burglars bounced and before the law showed up? This brings us to some real street knowledge that everybody needs to understand. The people you trust can either hold you down down or hang you out to dry. And sometimes you don't know which one it is until it's too late to do anything about it. Based on the drugs they found during this burglary investigation, authorities issued arrest warrants, and this is where the story gets even more twisted. The victim of a violent home invasion, who wasn't even in the same state when it went down, was now facing serious felony charges that could potentially send her upstate for years. Let's explore how GLO's legal team came out swinging, the public outcry that followed, and the disturbing pattern of how the system really moves when it comes to our people. But first, we need to understand exactly what happened when GloRilla found out she was wanted by these boys, and how her response sparked even more controversy about celebrity justice in America. How they did GLO dirty with these charges. All right, now we get into the part where this whole situation goes completely left, and I need y'all to pay attention to every detail, because this matters when it comes to understanding just how ridiculous up our justice system can be when they decide to make an example out of one of our people. What went down next is some real controversial stuff, and the way it played out shows you exactly how they can flip the narrative on you faster than you can say "free my homie." GloRilla kept it 100 and voluntarily turned herself in to Forsyth County Jail on Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. After these authorities issued arrest warrants based on the drugs they found during the burglary investigation. Think about this move for a minute. Shorty could have fought extradition, hired some expensive lawyers to stall the process, or tried to make this whole thing disappear through some behind-the-scenes politics. Instead, she did what most real ones would do. She faced it head-on with her chest out. But the charges they was hitting her with wasn't no joke neither. They charged her with 2 felony offenses under Georgia law: felony possession of marijuana for having more than 1 ounce of loud, and possession of a Schedule I controlled substance. In Georgia, this ain't no slap on the wrist. If they convicted her on that felony marijuana possession, Shorty was looking at 1 to 10 years behind bars. Let me break this down so it's crystal clear. While the grimy folks who ran up in her spot and terrorized her family was still running around free in the streets, GloRilla was facing the possibility of spending up to a decade locked up for some substances they found in her own crib during the investigation of crimes committed against her. That's some backwards logic if I ever heard it. She bonded out the same day for $22,260, but the damage to her rep and the stress of facing these serious charges was already starting to pile up. Imagine being in her position. You just came off a successful performance at a major sporting event, feeling like you on top of the world, only to come home and find out you now got a warrant out for your arrest and facing potential prison time. The legal situation makes this even more messed up. While weed done been decriminalized in mad states, it's still illegal in Georgia except for some limited medical use of low THC oil. That felony classification for having over an ounce shows you just how strict these drug laws still are in Forsyth County. This ain't California or Colorado we talking about. This is Georgia, where the drug law is still stuck in that 1980s just say no era. But GLO wasn't about to take this lying down. On July 24th, 2025, she took to social media to address this situation directly, and her response was nothing short of explosive. Her post on X was straight fire. Crazy. My house got home invaded Saturday while I was in Indianapolis performing for the WNBA All-Star game, and instead of focusing on finding the suspects, they focus on some cannabis one. So no, I wasn't busted too. My house got robbed 3. I wasn't home. Long story short, my house gets home invaded and I'm the only one that gets arrested. Peep how she strategically crafted this message though. She made sure to emphasize that she was at a high-profile, nationally televised event, giving her an unshakable alibi. She used the word cannabis instead of weed or loud, probably on advice from her legal team to sound more professional, and she highlighted the complete absurdity of the situation. The victim of a violent crime was the only person who got arrested, but GLO didn't stop there. Shorty showed she understood the game when she flipped this negative situation into a positive by selling $40 merchandise featuring her mugshot. This move was compared to what Travis Scott did after his legal issues, and TMZ even said her mugshot was great looking. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. She was literally making money off what was supposed to destroy her career. Meanwhile, her legal team wasn't playing games neither. GloRilla's attorneys, Marissa Goldberg and Drew Findling from the Findling Law Firm, came out with a statement that was basically a declaration of war against the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. They called the arrest a disturbing window into how warped law enforcement priorities have become. Listen to what this legal expert had to say about the situation.
Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house, and obviously there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming, and law enforcement on a call to protect her found, oops, We got to do it.
But here's where her legal team's arguments get real spicy and should have every person in America concerned about police overreach. First point, GloRilla was the victim of a violent home invasion, not a suspect. This seems like basic common sense, but apparently these badges needed it spelled out for them. Second point, her family members who were there during the burglary did the right thing by calling the police, but these officers shifted their focus to what they called a small amount of marijuana, which directly contradicted the sheriff's claim of finding a significant amount. Third point, and this is the most damning of all, law enforcement went through all the trouble to get search warrants and arrest warrants for GloRilla, who hadn't been at her crib for some time, while not a single arrest warrant was issued for the violent burglars. Her attorneys called the whole situation absolutely unbelievable and a complete waste of tax dollars. They wasn't just defending their client, they was calling out a whole system that seemed more interested in making headlines by arresting a celebrity than actually solving violent street crimes. The legal team put the spotlight on the trauma that GloRilla's family went through during this home invasion and criticized how little progress was made in catching the actual suspects. Think about this real talk. Innocent people got terrorized in their own space, had guns pointed at them, feared for their lives, and the motherfuckers responsible was still walking around free while the victim was getting prosecuted. But the sheriff's office wasn't backing down from their position. Sheriff Ron Freeman addressed the incident saying, "The homeowner is a victim of a serious crime, and we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice. At the same time, we must continue to uphold and enforce the law in all aspects of this case." This statement perfectly shows the problem. They acknowledged she was a victim while simultaneously treating her like a criminal. The legal expert explained how they justified this situation.
Circumstantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today, and we know it snowed somehow. They smell marijuana, and as a result of that, they executed a search warrant, and what did they find? Well over an ounce, which is a felony.
The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office confirmed that the burglary investigation was still active, with detectives claiming they recovered physical and trace forensic evidence from the suspects. But no arrests had been made for the actual burglary as of July 27, 2025. Let me spell this out for y'all. Days after this incident went down, with all the resources of a county sheriff's office, a regional drug task force, and major crimes detectives, they couldn't catch 3 burglars who left physical evidence behind. But they managed to arrest the victim within days of the crime happening. The streets responded exactly how you'd expect. People on Twitter was going off about the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, with users calling out the focus on GloRilla's drug charges instead of the burglary. Posting, GloRilla said that no arrests for suspects were made after her home was burglarized, but she was the one arrested for weed possession there. Forsyth police definitely did Glo dirty. Mad outlets covered this story, including the Washington Post, TMZ, Fox 5 Atlanta, WSB-TV, People, CNN, and The Guardian, all emphasizing how backwards it was that GloRilla was both the victim and the one getting arrested. When you got this many major news sources all covering the same story with the same angle, that tells you something about how bad this situation really was. Let's look at the bigger picture and ask some tough questions about the people GloRilla had around her that night and whether this was really just some bad luck or something more calculated. The real tea and some hard questions about loyalty. Now that we done covered the basic facts of this whole mess, it's time to dive into the deeper, more controversial questions that got the whole hood talking, but nobody in the mainstream media wants to address directly. Because while everybody focused on whether these police overreached, and they clearly did something foul, there's another side to this story that reveals some uncomfortable truths about the streets, loyalty, and the people you choose to keep in your circle when you make it to the top. Let me keep it 100 with y'all about the elephant in the room that everybody dancing around, but nobody wants to speak on directly. How exactly did GloRilla end up being the only person catching charges when she wasn't even in the same state? The answer to this question reveals some disturbing possibilities that should concern every person who's ever trusted somebody with their freedom, their reputation, or their life. This incident sparked conversations about systemic issues, particularly how Black Americans get targeted disproportionately for marijuana-related offenses. While this is absolutely real and part of a larger pattern of injustice in our system, I want to focus on something that I think is even more important for our people to understand. The people you trust can either protect you or destroy you, and sometimes the difference between the two ain't clear until it's too late. Let's think logically about what went down that night. 3 armed burglars ran up in GloRilla's spot. Family members were staying there and got traumatized by these violent intruders. Shots got fired to defend the property. The criminals bounced. The family called the police. Then, and this part is crucial, there was a significant gap of time between when the police got called and when they actually arrived to conduct their investigation. During that time, everybody in that house knew the law was coming. They knew there would be questions, searches, and mad scrutiny. They knew that that GloRilla, as the homeowner and the celebrity, would face the most exposure and risk. So here's my question to y'all. If you truly care about protecting somebody who was providing for you, giving you a place to stay, and whose success was probably benefiting you in countless ways, wouldn't your first instinct be to make sure there wasn't anything in that house that could get them jammed up? This ain't about victim blaming. GloRilla is clearly the victim of both some violent street stuff and police overreach, but it does raise some serious questions about the people in her inner circle and whether they truly had her back when it mattered most. Think about it like this. The weed was found in the master bedroom closet, which was obviously GloRilla's private space. The people staying in her crib would have known this. They would have known that anything found in her bedroom would get pinned on her. They would have known she was facing the most risk. Yet somehow that evidence remained exactly where the law would find it and exactly where it would cause maximum damage to her life and career. This wasn't GloRilla's first run-in with Georgia law enforcement. Back in April 2024, she got arrested in Gwinnett County for DUI after making an illegal U-turn at a red light, with police claiming they smelled weed and alcohol. This prior incident adds some context to the 2025 arrest and shows a pattern of legal troubles in the same state.
Well,
Do you know who I am?
No, I don't. No, ma'am. Oh.
Now here's where this story connects to a darker pattern in the entertainment industry. This case reminded a lot of people of what happened to Juice WRLD, where the people around him were present during his legal troubles. While the circumstances was different, the underlying question remains the same. When somebody reaches celebrity status and becomes a cash cow, are the people around them truly loyal, or are they just there for the benefits? One analyst broke it down perfectly. Why didn't they get that crap out of the house and bury it, Glo? Because see, a lot of people don't understand the concept of snitching. Snitching is not just sitting there talking to the police. The real thing is that in many celebrity circles, there's an unspoken understanding that everybody around the star benefits from their success. But when legal trouble comes knocking, it's every person for themselves. The people who was living in luxury off GloRilla's success, staying in her house, benefiting from her generosity, somehow couldn't be bothered to spend 5 minutes protecting her from a situation that could have destroyed her career and sent her upstate for up to a decade. But let's also address the law enforcement side of this equation, because their behavior was equally problematic, just in a different way. The contrast between pursuing GloRilla for drug charges while the burglars remained free was seen by many as another example of racial bias in policing. This ain't speculation. This is a documented pattern that's been studied extensively. When you're a young, successful black woman in the South, you already operating with a target on your back. When you add celebrity status, wealth, and influence to that equation, you become an even more attractive target for law enforcement agencies looking to make headlines and show they're tough on crime, even when that means ignoring actual violent criminals to prosecute somebody for possessing a plant. The legal expert explained the broader implications.
Oh, absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case herself, up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office recites it's very good, they will likely reduce this, depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packaged.
Despite all this legal drama, GloRilla still performed at the WNBA All-Star Game hours after the burglary and kept her career moving forward. She was scheduled to perform at her first annual Glo Bash in Memphis on July 25th, 2025, with artists like Mooney Long and Rob 49. The fact that she could maintain her professional obligations while dealing with this legal nightmare shows incredible strength and professionalism. Her debut album, Glorious, dropped in 2024, and hits like Yeah Glo and TGIF solidified her status as one of hip-hop's rising stars, with cosigns from legends like Rihanna and even visits to the White House in March 2024. This wasn't some minor celebrity dealing with legal troubles. This was a major rising star in hip-hop who had earned respect from the biggest names in the game and had even been invited to the White House. The potential consequences she was facing were no joke. If convicted on the felony marijuana possession charge, GloRilla could face 1 to 10 years in prison in Georgia. The penalty for the Schedule I controlled substance charge could also carry significant jail time, depending on what it was and how much. Think about what this means. A woman who had worked her whole life to escape the streets, who had built a successful career through talent and determination, who was supporting family members and creating opportunities for others, was facing the possibility of losing everything because of substances found in her own crib after she was the victim of a violent crime. As of the latest reports, the burglary investigation remains open, with the sheriff's office still pursuing forensic evidence, but the lack of arrests for the suspects continues to fuel criticism from GloRilla's team and supporters. Weeks later, violent criminals who terrorized innocent people are still roaming the streets while their victim continues to face felony charges. This case represents everything wrong with our justice system's priorities. It shows how law enforcement can lose sight of what really matters, protecting innocent people and catching dangerous criminals, in favor of making splashy arrests that generate headlines and boost their statistics. It also shows how the people closest to celebrities can sometimes fail them at the most crucial moments. GloRilla's response to this situation, turning her mugshot into merchandise, speaking out publicly, hiring excellent legal representation, shows that she understands the game and knows how to fight back. But she shouldn't have had to fight this battle in the first place. The streets are watching, and this case will be remembered as an example of how the system can flip the script on you in an instant, and how important it is to surround yourself with people who will really hold you down when it counts. Like this video? Click on the card showing on your screen for more.